Hey guys, welcome back. So in today's video, I'm really excited to be ranking the Scream franchise. It's very popular, has quite a fan base, so I've been hesitant to put this video out just because everybody has their opinions and I don't know how well it'll be received, this video, if I'll get a lot of negativity because people are very particular about which Ghostface they like and which film overall they really enjoy. All right, starting this list off at number 6. So at the very bottom, Scream 5 or Scream 2022. So when I watched this in theaters, I did not like it. Other than the opening sequence with Tara and that callback to Casey Becker, which I thought was phenomenal, this 2022 version is talking about requels. It doesn't really do anything different. It feels very similar to Scream 4. The reveal at the end with Amber and Richie was just probably one of the most lackluster things for me because their whole reason was basically toxic fandom. Not my favorite motive. I mean, it's very real. I know there's a lot of toxic fandom out there in the world, and that's something that I really enjoy with the Scream movies is that they stay relevant. I feel like certain things with like the newer films, it's like very heavy-handed with like the commentary of what they're talking about and explaining that. I wish there was a little bit more subtlety with that. I will say I do like Sidney Prescott in this movie. She's really badass. I like her look in this movie. I do enjoy Gale. Dewey's death, while it made me sad, I will say I will give credit that they took it there and they took a bold risk with that. They did a ballsy move. But after rewatching it several times, even though I do like it better now, or I can say I like it, it's still at the bottom of the totem pole for me. Coming in at number 5, we have the recent installment, which is Scream 6. So this one, and if you watched my review, I raved about it, how much I really enjoyed it. I've watched it 2 times. I didn't go back for a 3rd time. I really did enjoy this movie. It's so action-packed. The sequences are great. There's a lot to look forward to, especially with like some of the twists and turns that it takes with subverting your expectations, especially with the opening sequence. And as much as I love it, it's like a near perfect movie. I put it down here because I just hate the reveal. Even though I love the action involved and I love how Sam takes out all these Ghostface killers. By the way, there's like 5 Ghostface killers in total. Quick spoiler, I am going to state who they are. So who was it? It was Jason Carvey and his partner, which I don't remember his name. And then it was Detective Bailey, and then his 2 children, Ethan Bailey and Quinn Bailey, who are related to Richie. So the whole motivation for the family, the 3, is they want revenge. So we're seeing this revenge plot again. The other 2, it was to finish Richie's film. So disgruntled film students. It just, like, it's not even the motive that upsets me. It's just that I really don't want to trash the actors, but it just seemed ridiculous to me. Like, even at that point, like their delivery and everything that was going on, it was just like, kind of cringy to me. So that was the only thing that like took it like a nosedive off a cliff. But I mean, other than that, like Scream 6 is really enjoyable because we do have the same characters, the core 4 coming back, but definitely a lot more character development. And I've enjoyed Sam quite a bit. Like, she's just really badass. Coming in at number 4, we have Scream 4, which came out in 2011. So this one, of course, is directed by Wes Craven. This was his last Scream film that he directed before he passed away in 2015. What I do find really interesting about Scream 4 is that they had plans for a new trilogy, a new set. And this one is really cool because you do have that pseudo remake. Every Scream movie kind of discusses each continuation, basically, from like the original to sequel to the trilogy, remakes, requels, franchises. One thing that I will say about this movie is I do like the opening where we kind of get this fake out with all these sequences regarding the Stab movies. When I first watched this film in theaters, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good, and the advancement in technology that was present in the film, especially with live streaming, which I don't think was quite a popular thing at the time. Majority of this film, it's like it's good, but it's just not one of my personal favorites for some reason. And I think it has to do also with the characters. Like none of the characters are really anything to rave about. I think the only one that stands out to me is Jill towards the end, and Kirby. Kirby definitely is awesome, but aside from that, everybody else is kind of just, you know, your typical run-of-the-mill people to be picked off in a slasher. But I mean, I guess you could argue and say, I mean, that's pretty much every slasher movie. It's not my favorite version of Sidney Prescott, but I will say what I will give credit for with Scream 4 is the third act. So while I don't like Charlie, Jill being the killer, when I saw that in theaters, it really took me for a loop because I was not expecting her to be the killer. I will say the motive is one of my favorites.
My friends? What world are you living in? I don't need friends. I need fans.
Because honestly, it makes sense in this day and age, especially for the time then, like when the internet was still in its infancy. It makes sense. And it's so creepy how like it's still applicable today with content that you see online and how far people will go to have some sort of notoriety. I honestly wish this movie would have ended with Jill actually escaping, like getting what she wanted and just kind of leaving on a cliffhanger. I know they don't usually do that with Scream movies, but I think it would have been a refreshing and different take because no one's ever done that. So why not actually have a killer that gets away with the crimes they've committed? And she's probably the one that's closest to killing Sidney, I would say that. But yeah, Scream 4 is fine. It's just not one of my personal favorites. Next at number 3, we have Scream 3. I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this. I think Scream 3 is so underrated. It is so messy. I'm not gonna lie, it is messy. A lot of plot holes, a lot of bumps in the road that just, because this film had so many rewrites, which is so funny hearing Sarah Darling speaking to Roman over the phone and saying,
"Has there been another goddamn rewrite? How the fuck are we supposed to learn our lines when there's a new script every 15 minutes?
Yes, there were a lot of rewrites with the actual production of Scream 3. But I will say, like, Scream 3, like, what I love about it so much is that it's the oddball in the group. Scream 3 is really tamed. But what I love about this is it's one of my favorite versions of Sidney Prescott. I think she looks really badass. I think I like the attention to detail in, like, what she's wearing. She's wearing Derek's Greek letters, which you can see that she's still dealing with a lot of trauma. She's living in this isolated, like, home in California, which, by the way, is beautiful. The setting, that's like one of my favorite things. Like where Sidney is living, that would be my type of jam, just, you know, off grid. But also the production of Stab 3. While I don't think the characters are like the most interesting, but they're so goofy and enjoyable. Parker Posey as Jennifer Jolie, purely entertaining. Just a character that I enjoy every time that she came on screen. I think the biggest flaw with Scream 3 is that there's like a lot of filler. And by the third act, it being Roman, the only Ghostface that worked alone, even though in the script it was supposed to be Angelina who was his partner. I feel mixed on it. I feel mixed on that whole reveal that there's this estranged brother, but, there is a but. I do like the way this movie ties in everything with Maureen Prescott and just like everything that we didn't really know in the previous films. Like she was very obscure and we didn't have that much information about her life, but something about this movie is just so charming. I don't know how to explain it. I really enjoy it. After rewatching it, I will say like the opening sequence with Cotton is probably one of the weakest, and I really wish this movie would have gone in the direction of including Stu Macher, which is why they changed everything, especially with Columbine, because I think the original script was to have Stu behind bars, prison, and kind of, you know, brainwashing these young kids into like this cult following. Scrap that, then had Roman and Angelina, scrap that, and then it was just Roman. And it has a very heartwarming ending with Dewey proposing to Gail and Sidney with Kincaid, which obviously it's referenced in the later films that they did in fact get married and had little girls. So, all right, like, something about Scream 3 I just highly enjoy. All right, guys, prepare to be pissed off. Coming in at number 2, we have Scream 1996. Now hold your horses. I do love this movie. Love it so much. It's obviously a classic. It's just not my favorite one. I love Scream, and this is the movie that, like, the blueprint of it all. There's so many characters that I really enjoy. Billy Loomis, Stu Macher, Sidney Prescott, obviously, and kind of a glimpse into her life and the trauma with her mother. And there's some pretty interesting kills in this movie between Tatum, the way Stu supposedly gets killed. And this film has the best opening sequence by far with Casey Becker. It's one of the most haunting ones. Like, even rewatching it, especially her being hung from a tree, it's in that zoom, the way it zooms up to her. And I can't help but praise the performances in this movie, especially when everything is revealed and how just manic Stu Macher is and how deranged Billy Loomis is with, like, all the horror movie references that he lists, from Norman Bates and Psycho to, you know, just watching The Exorcist, which made him think of Sidney. I'm like, oh, how romantic. And I would highly recommend, if you haven't, to watch the behind the scenes footage of the making of Scream. There's Wes Craven shooting the scene with Drew Barrymore where Casey Becker gets stabbed by Ghostface, and she just is all smiles and giddy and covered in blood. It's hilarious. So they look like they had a really fun time making the movie. And I just personally think this movie was so ahead of its time with what it was intending on doing, with poking fun at the horror tropes that you see constantly, while also playing into it, especially that scene where Sidney is talking to Ghostface, thinking it's Randy, and she's explaining why she doesn't watch horror movies, then proceeds to do the same thing that she says they typically do. And now, talking about Scream, it makes me want to revisit Wes Craven's New Nightmare, because that one also has, like, that meta aspect to it, which underrated movie. If you have not watched that one, go see it. But that leads me to my number one. That is Scream 2, which came out the following year in 1997. This movie definitely has my second favorite opening sequence, with the killings that take place at the movie theater and, like, all the moviegoers thinking it's a publicity stunt. But also Maureen Evans, played by Jada Pinkett, gives some really good commentary.
All I'm saying is that the horror genre is historical for excluding the African-American element.
Well, that's how you get your PhD in black cinema, Sister Soldier.
But this movie is such a comfort watch. It's one that I always go back to because I enjoy it so much. It has my favorite Ghostface, which is Mickey. And one of the most unique motives, I guess, he wants to get caught. He wants to go to trial. He wants to blame it on the movies and the effects of cinema violence on society. You know, he has his whole spiel and his monologues that he breaks it down, like why he's doing what he's doing. And what I find really interesting with him is that he was already a serial killer before this. So him coming into contact with Mrs. Loomis, or I should say Debbie Salt, who she's incognito as, it's just, I don't know, just that dynamic between the two. It's very interesting, even though he's the lapdog. But I find him more interesting than Mrs. Loomis, who's, you know, the mastermind of this plan that she's orchestrating just to get revenge and kill Sidney. So, I mean, I like both of their motives, and I really enjoy Sidney in this movie. This is by far, hands down, my favorite version of Sidney. I love the side characters in this movie. Hallie, Derek, who were originally supposed to be the two killers, but because of leaks, they rewrote it, and I'm glad that we got the final product that we did. But I also want to say this is probably my favorite version of Gale Weathers, and the fact that she gets, like, backhanded again because, you know, she's an opportunistic individual who just can't resist a good story. It's hilarious. This movie, out of all of them, I will say, made me laugh the most. And if you've seen it, you know, Joel, the cameraman, just a lot of lines from that actor that were ad-libbed. I love everything included with this film. I don't think there's, like, really one negative that I have with this movie. I'm trying to think. Going back, I'm, like, rewinding the film in my head. No, I even love the cafeteria scene, which I know it's probably really cringy. I think that's the intention, is, like, he's, like, professing his love, but, you know, he's not really doing a great job with the singing. But it's endearing. I don't know. I like that they kept that. The only flaw, I will nitpick it a little bit. The only thing I could really say is like, I wish we could have gotten more of Mickey. The other thing that I wanted to state was like with Mrs. Loomis, I didn't call her being the killer. If memory serves me right, when I was younger, I thought it was really odd that she just happened to be everywhere where either, a crime took place or like where the main characters were. But Mickey was kind of obvious if you watch it. I know he's a film student, but he has a camera on him all the time. And then later on, when Dewey and Gale are getting it on, you see the footage right before the murders. Oh, and I totally forgot. This is, again, we have Randy, one of my favorite characters, coming to bring us the rules. In this one, of course, the rules of a sequel, and the killers are copycat killers in this situation. But it's also really sad because I did not want Randy to die. I think that was like the hardest pill to swallow when I was younger watching this movie, was the fact that Randy dies. I was heartbroken. Let me know what you guys think about my ranking and comment down below. Let me know what your ranking is of the Scream movies. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be back, hopefully talking about Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. I'm probably going to watch that today. So at some point I'm going to edit this video, but I will be watching that movie, which I know it has very negative reception, but I'm still curious. So hey, why not? I've got time to kill. But yeah, I hope you guys have an awesome day.